Hello and welcome to my second virtual Grand Prix review. My name is Alex does F1 Stuff and this is going to be my virtual Melbourne Grand Prix review. Like last time in my previous review for Bahrain, I'll pop a little card in the corner, we went over the roster of all of the drivers. Now obviously the drivers have changed a wee bit, we've got some returning people and we have more as well. As I mentioned in my F1 chat, again, little card in the corner, we now have 6 F1 drivers on the grid. So without further ado, let's get into the roster. So Mercedes are sticking with their trusted lineup of 2 weeks ago with Stoffel van Dorn, their Formula E driver, and Esteban Gutierrez, their reserve. Ferrari have gone for Charles Leclerc, their proper F1 driver, and Arthur Leclerc, who I believe they pronounced it Arthur, but I'm just going to call him Arthur. Otherwise I'm going to butcher it to crap. Red Bull have changed up their driver lineup as well. They've gone with Alexander Albon, current Formula 1 driver, and Ben Stokes, a cricketer who crickets for us, but I don't care too much about cricket, to be honest. And moving into McLaren, they've gone with Lando Norris again, making his second appearance, and Jenson Button, the former 2009 Formula 1 world champion for Brawn and McLaren driver from 2010 to 2016, making one appearance in 2017. Renault have switched up their lineup as well with Andre Heimgartner, I think, the Australian Supercars, and Christian Lundgaard. I've slightly practiced these names a little bit since my last F1 chat where I went over them and couldn't pronounce them at all. AlphaTauri now, they've gone with Lucas Alvadori again from last time, and Nunzio Tedesco, a content creator going by the name of Nu89, I think. NU89. I'm not sure who he was, but he's in this race. Racing Point have changed their lineup as well, sticking with Jimmy Broadbent from 2 weeks ago, but Anthony Davidson has switched from Haas to Racing Point now. Moving to Alfa Romeo, they've gone with Antonio Giovinazzi, their Formula 1 driver, and Johnny Herbert as well, making his return. He's still with Alfa Romeo. And finally, Haas. Oh, wow, I forgot Haas. So yes, Haas, they've gone with Pietro Fittipaldi, the grandson to the great Emerson Fittipaldi, and Louis Delatraz. Louis Delatraz is currently the Formula 2 racer, but they are both Haas reserve drivers. And now, finally, we get on to Williams, a full F1 driver lineup there with Nicholas Latifi and George Russell. So, like I did 2 weeks ago, I'm going to briefly go over all of the qualifying results, and then I'll go over the race results, and then there'll be a little scrolly thing of the lap-by-lap leader changes as I just go through some of my notes that I have written down on my bits of paper. So going into qualifying, we have a pole position for Christian Lundgaard in the Renault. Charles Leclerc is in P2 with Russell in 3rd. Delatraz, Arthur Leclerc, his brother, in 5th. Albon, Latifi and Giovinazzi is followed by Norris down in 9th. We've got a group of F1 drivers all in the top there. Van Dorn and Fittipaldi are next, and then we fall to the first person that is outside of a second from Lundgaard, with Lucas Alvadori down in 12th. Gutierrez, Button and Heimgartner are all kind of close. Tedesco is in front of the Racing Point pair. Broadbent not doing as well as he did last time out. I'm not sure what happened with him. There was no connection issues this time. So he was able to set his nice qualifying laps, but he was 2 seconds off the pace of Lundgaard. And then Herbert and Stokes rounding off the grid, 2.4 seconds off and 3.6 seconds off for Stokes. So that is qualifying there. We'll swiftly move on to the race. Not sure if you noticed, I've chosen to do this one not scripted, so I haven't scripted looking at the leaderboards and stuff. I'm just going to keep more videos unscripted because I feel it's more personal, more engaging. Like I said in my F1 chat previously, it just feels nicer to do it unscripted than to write a long old script for these kind of videos. Anyway, taking a look at the race, for those that did not know, Leclerc enjoyed a fantastic race. Just lights to flag, absolutely bossed it, got the victory there. Christian Lundgaard in 2nd, Russell in the Williams in 3rd. Haven't seen a Williams on the podium since 2017 Baku. Arthur Leclerc in 4th, Giovinazzi in 5th, Van Dorn 6th, Delatraz 7th, Albon 8th, Broadbent 9th, Latifi 10th, rounding off the points. A double points finish for Williams. I can't remember the last time that happened off the top of my head. Button just outside the points in 11th, the two AlphaTauris in 12th and 13th, Fittipaldi 14th, Davidson 15th, Heimgartner 16th, Herbert 17th, and Stokes 18th. With Norris and Gutierrez failing to start, I said there were no connection issues. That was only for qualifying. They did end up leaving the session between qualifying and the race and were unable to rejoin. Also, my race time says 41 minutes and 16 seconds dead. That was just the time I could get from the YouTube stream, so that is not their exact race time. However, their gaps and the intervals are the exact race times that they had when they finished. I just grabbed a little screenshot of the ending results, so those are the official gaps between all of the drivers. So, like I did last time, I'm just going to go over a little bit of chit-chat before I then get into the championships for the race. I'm just going to have like I did last time, just a little scrolly thing of each of the leaderboards whilst I talk about some things. So again, with the last race, I took some live notes. I got some bits of paper floating about here, just taking some ideas, just writing some stuff down as it happened live, and just generally my thoughts. So the first thing to note is that they did their own tables. I saw just as I started. For those that don't know, the Queen's speech to the nation was on at literally exactly the same time. So I had that on at the whilst I had the stream muted, and just in the corner of my eye on my second screen, I could see that they put out their own tables with their own times and gaps and stuff. And I went, no, that's my unique bit for this series gone. They've done it now. That bugged me a little bit. I don't mind too much, but it was just a wee bit annoying. Anyway, they also changed some of the game settings as well to have no damage. Because if you remember 2 weeks ago, there was that big first lap incident between like Boganovic and Hulkenberg and a couple other drivers where they spun, lost their wings, and had to come all the way back to the pits. So it was a little bit more of an arcadey racer this time. And I just wrote, hopefully they don't mess about too much with the fact that there's no damage, and it's a slightly longer race as well. It was actually a 50% race this time. The qualifying was still exactly the same. It was still 18 minutes, although it was a bit of a weird one because they were still talking in the studio, and then they suddenly just cut to qualifying, and it was already like 2 minutes in. So, well, why aren't we watching all of qualifying? And then also we didn't have any lap time or time of how long the session had left. It was for some reason counting up in laps. It was qualifying was a little bit on the bizarre side, I will admit. Everyone set all their laps. Leclerc was the early pace setter. There were a couple of incidents as well, few spins, few little crashes here and there, couple penalties, but not too much. They don't really care too much about them. I tried to keep like a little bit of track of them, but it didn't. It was a little bit difficult because there was no overall table that I could then change it for. So I just sort of had to note who got a penalty and when it was, and that's all I've done with it. I haven't done anything else. So as you saw, Lundgaard did actually set pole. However, he didn't start first. It was Charles Leclerc who started first because Lundgaard was penalised. I'm not sure what for, but I think he started 4th or 5th. It was either a 3 or 5 place penalty that he got, starting a bit further down the grid. Then I don't know what really happened. Everyone was clean. It was a very clean race compared to last 2 weeks ago. There was not really much went on the first couple laps. I mean, 3 people went off at exactly the same point. Albon was one of them. There were a couple other people. It was in the opening first lap or second lap that you just saw one car and the commentators went, oh my god, Albon's gone off, and then you just see another car come in. They went, oh, there's a second one, and bang, into the third one came in, reminiscent of when it must have been a Nürburgring race in 08 or 07 or something like that, where I think it was with it would have been earlier than that, with Winkelhock winning or leading a race for the first time in his career, and you just had cars just piling off at the first corner coming down the hill at the Nürburgring into the right-hand turn. it was sort of reminiscent of that, with just people doing exactly the same mistake. Moving further into the race, I haven't really written much. Ben Stokes has spun a couple times. Broadbent up to P8 on lap 3. Everyone's sort of settling in. I am literally just reading my notes at this point, because honestly, there wasn't much to it. It was good, clean racing. Everyone sort of settled in to be within about like a 1 to 1.5 second, sometimes 3 or 4 second gap, and that was about it for the rest of the race. There wasn't really many changes. Around lap 5 though, Russell did make a mistake, and then it was actually a Leclerc 1-2 with Charles leading his brother Arthur. Charles did have a fantastic race, lights to flag, victory, didn't lose the lead once, even through the pit stop phase as well, because there were actually pit stops in this race on about lap 9 roughly. So a couple people came in, went back. So I think Giovinazzi and Arthur Leclerc, they were sort of glued together for a bit, but Arthur kept on making some mistakes. He was said by the pundits before to be like a really good sim racer and better than his brother Charles and most of the people on the grid, but he kept on making small mistakes, kind of like Vettel in the Ferrari, just spinning occasionally, like at Monza, or when he was fighting with Hamilton. He would just occasionally spin and make a little mistake and would lose all this awesome ground that he'd slowly started gaining up. There was a good battle though on lap 6 between Lundgaard and Arthur Leclerc as well. They were sort of outbraking each other, defending quite well. However, Leclerc went a bit too deep though, and then multiple warnings were given out a lot for corner cutting. Like Broadbent was getting them, Herbert was getting them, obviously cutting the first corner at Bahrain hugely. It just didn't exist to him. Who else got some? I wrote somewhere down here, just lots of corner cuts, penalties everywhere going through. I think Giovinazzi got some at one point. Yeah, it was bonkers. Penalties wise, it was bonkers. And then here we go, lap 15. I just wrote nothing really notable. Everyone about 1.5 seconds off each other, and that was all I could really say, because it was good racing. There just wasn't like a lot of it. Everyone was really mixed, but we had some motorbike just drives past my house. Yeah, we just had a lot of people that were just sort of close to each other. I know I've repeated that a lot, but that's all there really was. But Charles definitely just stretched his lead. I think at one point it was about 10 plus seconds, and that was where it sort of stayed from about lap 17 onwards. No one could really gain on him at all. Oh, another thing to note, that all the ghosting cars, that was when people were being lapped. There was some confusion in the commentary box at the time where they saw a car. I think it was one of the Alfa Romeos. I think it mainly confused them because it was Giovinazzi coming up to lap Herbert, his teammate, and Herbert had ghosted to allow for an easier overtake, so they can both stick to the racing line, and the lead car just goes through the back marker. But because they were the two Alfa Romeos, the commentary team were like, oh, what's happened to Giovinazzi? Why is he split into two cars? But it was just the back markers were ghosted whenever a faster car was coming up behind, so they can easily go through and not have to sacrifice their own race. But unfortunately, Herbert was down at the bottom of the grid for the majority of the race, along with Stokes. I think they had a couple of good battles, but I'm not too sure on that. I'll have to rewatch it again a second time. Ooh, there was a cracking battle though, between, I think, was it Button and Fittipaldi? I think, or Button and Latifi, around lap 26, about 2-3 laps till the end. For about half a lap at Melbourne, they were side by side, outbraking each other, taking corners together, and it got to the point where Latifi did end up getting past, as Button was trying to defend, but he just broke way too late and just overshot his mark completely, and then Latifi just cut underneath him and managed to regain the place. I'm not sure what place that was for, probably the last points paying position, I think, for 10th. And then on the final lap, I've just wrote nothing really happened apart from Fittipaldi having an incident, and he crashed, not crashed, but spun, because no one retired from the race. We only had people not starting. And there we go, that was my live notes for the Melbourne Grand Prix. My views of it is it's still really fun. It's still worth watching for the hour and a half that the whole stream is on for. It's not like good racing. It's not bad racing either, but it's definitely not like F1 by any stretch of the imagination. But it is good fun. It's a hella good fun to just watch and just waste an hour and a half in this quarantined period of time that we're in at the moment. So yeah, I think now is about a good time to go over the championships, and I have made some changes. I've also actually got to animate them and actually put them in, because I just realised as I started recording that it's like, oh, I haven't actually finished yet I've already started. So I'm going to just quickly add those in, and then we'll go over the championships right at the very end. So there we go, that was my opinions of the race. Not entirely sure what I've said, as I am actually recording this clip a few hours after the rest of the recording session. So I think, as I said in the video, I forgot to actually animate this last half, and I just completely ignored it. Completely forgot about the championships and the fact that I'd spent the previous day spending about 2-3 hours on Excel trying to work out how to do all of this and make all these tables pretty, and then I just forgot to add it into my video. I'm so stupid. So I then popped it all in and thought, oh, this is fine, I'll just keep all my recording stuff running. I then ended up recording for about 45 minutes for a video that is probably only going to be 15 minutes, because I just kept it on whilst I still animated and everything. I thought, yeah, it's going to be fine, the file will be fine. It wasn't. Luckily the first half of it is all good, so I don't have to re-record any apart from this bit, because when I got to this section of the championship, it was dreadful. The footage was blurry and glitchy and just awful, so I need to make a mental note to myself not to record for longer than, I think, like 30 minutes, 40 minutes or something like that. Anyway, so yes, we are going over the Drivers' Championship. So I will quickly go over the Bahrain Championship, as we didn't go over it in the last episode 2 weeks ago. So this is what the championship would have looked like in normal F1 points terms, with Zhao taking the lead from Van Dorn, Eng, Broadbent, Norris, Latifi, Salvadori, Redeye, Beganovic, Gutierrez. Nice and simple, easy peasy. However, it gets less easy peasy when you start to add in more drivers and take away drivers from the grid as well. So what I've decided to do is whack in an arrow and make this table. Looks identical, because at the minute it is. However, what I have done is taken the number of races that each driver has done, indicated by the races column, and then worked out their average points over the amount of races that they have done. So obviously everyone's going to still score the same amount of points because they've only done one race and they've scored 25. So for Zhao, he scored 25 points out of an available 25 points, so he's got 100%, and then it's the 100%. Same with Van Dorn, he's got 18 out of 25, which converts to 18. So that's a recap of Bahrain. Let's move on into Melbourne, which I have right here. So Melbourne, the normal championship as it stands. Afterwards, Van Dorn moves ahead of Zhao, with Leclerc bouncing up to third. So then it's followed by Lundgaard, Eng, Russell, Broadbent, Arthur Leclerc, Norris, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Salvadori, Delatraz, Redeye, Albon, Beganovic and Gutierrez in last on 1 point. Now if I chuck in another arrow, another fancy arrow, at least it's good this time, and we end up with this table here. So we have Zhao and Leclerc sharing top spot on equal on 25. We have Lundgaard on 18. As you can see now, Van Dorn is now 6th, but he's dropped those 18 points that he did have, and he's now on 13 as he's done 2 races, and the average is now taken over the 50 points available to him at 2 races. I hope that all makes sense, and then it just works all the way down the table to Gutierrez, who's done 2 races but only scored 1 point, so he's now on half a point. I will run both of these championships side by side exactly like this for every race. I think the table on the right is just a little bit more fairer, but the table on the left is a lot more official. So taking a look at the constructors and what differences that made. So this is the Bahrain table. Renault took a nice convincing lead from Mercedes, 6 points clear. Red Bull in third, with Racing Point, McLaren, Williams, AlphaTauri, Haas and Ferrari all scoring points, with Alfa Romeo at the bottom on 0. If I plop in yet another arrow, the table now looks a bit like this. Renault still in first, now 4 points from Ferrari, who jumped from 9th to 2nd, Mercedes fall to 3rd, with Williams now 4th, Red Bull 5th, Racing Point 6th, McLaren 7th, Haas 8th, Alfa Romeo off the bottom of the grid in 9th, and AlphaTauri now last. And there's no need to do anything to the constructors, as each race both teams run both cars. Easy peasy. And there we have it. That is the end of this review. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll catch you guys in the next video, whatever I decide to make.